In the outer rim of the Andromeda Fringe, where stars flickered like dying candles and silence stretched for light years, Claire Morgan drifted alone through the void. Her ship, the rusted but reliable skiff named Marlowe, hummed softly as it coasted past asteroid fields and dead comms buoys. She was a salvager by trade, a quiet woman with calloused hands and eyes that had seen too many wrecks and not enough sunrises. Most folks avoided this stretch of space, too far from the core worlds, too close to the whispers of things that should not be. But Claire liked the quiet. It gave her room to think, to forget, to breathe. That day began like any other. She was scanning for salvageable metal near the graveyard of a failed colony when a faint signal pinged on her console. It was weak, almost buried under static, but it pulsed with a rhythm that felt deliberate, not random noise. A distress call. Her fingers hovered over the controls. Protocol said to ignore it. Out here, distress signals were often traps set by raiders or worse. But something in the tone of that pulse tugged at her, like a half-remembered dream. Against her better judgment, she adjusted course. The source was a derelict vessel, long and skeletal, its hull pitted with micrometeor scars and scorched by old plasma burns. No markings, no registry, nothing to say who it belonged to or what it carried. It floated near a red dwarf star that flickered like a dying heartbeat, casting long shadows across its broken corridors. Claire suited up, checked her oxygen, and tethered herself to the Marlowe before stepping into the airlock. The silence outside was absolute, pressing against her helmet like a weight. Inside, the ship groaned with every step she took, metal protesting against time and neglect. Lights flickered in sporadic bursts, revealing walls lined with sealed doors and shattered consoles. The air was stale, frozen in time. She followed the signal deeper into the vessel, past empty barracks and labs filled with overturned equipment. Then she found it, a cryo chamber tucked away in a reinforced vault at the heart of the ship. It was active, barely. Frost coated its surface, but a soft blue glow pulsed from within. Claire wiped the ice away with her glove. Inside lay a woman, pale as moonlight, with silver hair that floated weightlessly in the cryo fluid. Her ears tapered to delicate points, and faint lines of bioluminescent blue traced her temples like veins of living starlight. She looked neither human nor machine, but something in between, ancient and strange. Claire hesitated. Freeing a stranger from a prison ship in deep space was reckless, but the woman's face held no malice, only sorrow, even in sleep. With careful hands, Claire bypassed the chamber's lock using a salvaged override chip. The hiss of depressurization filled the room as the fluid drained and the lid slid open. The woman gasped, her eyes snapping open, silver irises wide with shock and pain. She coughed, trembling, and Claire caught her before she collapsed. The woman's skin was cold but not lifeless. She clutched Claire's arm with surprising strength. "You should not have done this," the woman whispered, her voice like wind through glass. "They will come for me, and now they will come for you." Claire helped her sit, offering a thermal blanket from her pack. "Who are you, Lyria?" she said. "Just Lyria, and you are kinder than your kind usually are." Claire frowned. "My kind humans?" Lyria said, her gaze distant. "You burn bright and fast. You forget quickly, but sometimes you surprise us." Lyria struggled to stand, leaning on Claire for support. She moved like someone who had not walked in decades. As they made their way back through the ship, Lyria spoke in fragments, of a war older than Earth, of empires that fed on memory, of beings who saw humans as little more than sparks in the dark. Claire listened, half believing, half wondering if the thin air was playing tricks on her mind. When they reached the airlock, Lyria stopped. She turned to Claire, her silver eyes searching. "You will not remember this," she said softly. "Not yet. The mind protects itself from what it cannot bear. But when the time comes, you will know. And you will choose again." Before Claire could respond, Lyria reached up and brushed a single tear from her own cheek. It fell not as water, but as a tiny crystal that glowed faintly blue. She pressed it into Claire's palm. "Keep this. It will find you when you need it most." Then, without another word, Lyria stepped into the void. Claire shouted after her, but the woman did not look back. Instead, she raised her hand, and the darkness around her rippled like water. A tear in space opened, a shimmering rift, and Lyria stepped through. It sealed behind her, leaving only silence. Claire stood there, stunned, the crystal warm in her hand. She returned to the Marlowe in a daze, her thoughts muddled. By the time she sealed the airlock and removed her helmet, the memory of Lyria was already fading like smoke in wind. She remembered boarding the derelict, finding the cryo chamber, But the woman's face blurred, her words turned to echoes. Only the crystal remained real. Nestled in her pocket, humming softly against her skin, days passed. The Marlowe drifted back toward the inner rim, hauling scrap in silence. Claire tried to piece together what had happened, but the harder she thought, the less she recalled. She kept the crystal on her desk, a strange paperweight she could not explain. Sometimes, in dreams, she saw silver eyes and heard a voice whispering about stars that would bleed red. She woke each time with a chill she could not shake. Life returned to its usual rhythm. She repaired engines, traded parts, avoided conversations. But something had changed. She found herself staring at the stars longer than before, listening for a signal that never came. The crystal never stopped glowing, though faintly, as if waiting. Years would pass before she understood. Before the sky cracked open and Lyria returned, not as a ghost but as a storm. But for now, in the quiet dark of the Andromeda Fringe, Claire Morgan held a secret she could not remember, carrying a debt she did not know she owed. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, an empire stirred, hunting the one who had escaped, and the human who had set her free. Years had passed since Claire Morgan last drifted near the edge of known space. She no longer chased salvage through dead zones or slept in the cold hum of a lone skiff. Now she ran a small but steady repair dock orbiting Ceres 9, a terraformed moon with soft green hills and twin suns that painted the sky in gold each evening. Her days were filled with engine diagnostics, fuel line fixes, and the occasional barter with freight pilots who stopped for rest. It was quiet, predictable, safe, and for a long time that was enough. The crystal Lyria had given her sat on her workbench tucked between wrenches and spare coils. It still glowed faintly, though Claire rarely noticed it anymore. She had stopped dreaming of silver eyes. The memory of the derelict ship had faded into myth. Something she told herself must have been a hallucination, brought on by oxygen thinning or cosmic radiation. She never spoke of it, never showed the crystal to anyone. It was just another oddity in a life full of them. One evening, as Claire wiped grease from her hands and watched the twin suns dip below the horizon, her station's proximity alarm chimed. Not the usual freighter ping. This was different, sharp, rhythmic, and unregistered. She frowned and walked to the main console, boots clicking on the metal floor. The screen showed a vessel descending through the upper atmosphere, moving fast but controlled. No transponder, no comms, just a sleek silhouette cutting through the clouds like a blade. Her first thought was pirates. Her second was worse. She activated the perimeter turrets, old but functional, and locked the outer bay doors. But before she could send a warning burst, the ship slowed. It hovered just above the landing pad, silent and smooth, its hull shimmering like liquid obsidian. Then, without fanfare, the ramp lowered. A figure stepped out. Claire's breath caught. Even from a distance, she knew that shape, that posture. Silver hair catching the last light, tall and graceful, eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. Lyria, unchanged, untouched by time. And behind her, unfolding from the ship's hold like a shadow-given form, came something impossible. A dragon. It was massive, its body covered in scales that shifted from black to deep violet in the fading light, wings folded against its back like storm clouds, claws digging gently into the landing pad without tearing the metal. Its eyes, golden and slit-pupiled, locked onto Claire's station with eerie intelligence. It did not roar. It did not threaten. It simply stood, watchful, as if guarding something precious. Claire's hands trembled. Memories she thought were gone rushed back like floodwater. Cold metal, a cryo chamber, a tear turned to crystal. She stumbled back, knocking over a tool cart. The crystal on her bench pulsed brighter, as if answering a call. Lyria walked toward the station unhurried. She wore a suit that looked grown rather than stitched, its surface rippling with faint energy. When she reached the airlock, she placed a hand on the door. It hissed open without her touching the controls. Claire stood frozen in the main bay, heart hammering. "You remembered?" Lyria said, her voice softer than Claire recalled, but no less strange. I forgot," Claire admitted. "For years. I thought it was a dream." "Dreams are just memories waiting to wake," Lyria replied. "And you were needed." Needed for what? Before Lyria could answer. The dragon stepped inside. The ceiling groaned under its height, but it ducked its head with surprising grace. It sniffed the air, then settled beside Lyria like a loyal hound. Claire stared, unable to look away. "This is Kalen," Lyria said, placing a hand on the creature's snout. "He is not a pet. He is my brother-in-law, my shield, my voice when mine fails." Kalen blinked slowly, then lowered his head toward Claire, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. She reached out hesitantly and touched one of his scales. It was warm, vibrating faintly like a purr made of stone and fire. "You said you were a vampire," Claire said, pulling her hand back. "I said no such thing," Lyria corrected gently. "Humans gave me that name because they feared what they did not understand. I'm a soul drinker, but not of blood. I feed on memories, on moments, on the essence of what makes a being real. In my people's tongue, we are called the Veiled. We do not kill. We preserve, or we did before the Empire twisted our purpose. The Empire, the dominion of echoes," Lyria said, her voice darkening. "They rule the Veiled Expanse, a region beyond your charts. They captured me because I refused to use my gift to erase. They wanted me to drain worlds clean, to feed their memory forge, a machine that consumes entire civilizations and leaves nothing behind." "Not even a whisper." Claire swallowed. "Why did you come back? Because you freed me," Lyria said. "And in doing so you bound yourself to me. Not by chains, but by choice. The crystal you kept, it is a key, forged from my tear, shaped by your compassion. Only a human who acted without greed, without fear, could awaken it. And only such a human can wield it against the forge." Claire looked at the crystal, now glowing steadily on her bench. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat. "They are coming here, aren't they?" "They have already begun," Lyria said. 3 colony worlds near the fringe vanished last cycle. Not destroyed, erased, no debris, no signals. As if they never existed. The Dominion is expanding, and Earth is next. Claire sat down heavily on a crate. She was just a mechanic, not a soldier, not a hero. She fixed things that broke. She did not fight empires. "I can't stop them," she said. "You do not have to stop them alone," Lyria replied. "But you must try. The key responds to you. It always has. That is why I returned." Kalen nudged Claire's shoulder gently, his warm breath fogging her visorless face. She looked into his golden eyes and saw something she recognized. Grief, yes, but also hope. A creature who had lost everything yet still chose to stand. "What do I do?" "First you remember everything," Lyria said. "Truly remember." She stepped closer and placed her palm over Claire's heart. The crystal flared. Light filled the room, not harsh but deep and warm like sunlight through water. Images flooded Claire's mind. The derelict ship, the cryo chamber, Lyria's whispered warning, the rift in space. But more than that, she felt Lyria's pain, her loneliness, her awe at a human who helped without asking why. She saw Kalen as a hatchling, stolen from his nest, forced to burn cities he never knew. She felt the weight of erased worlds, millions of lives blinking out like candles in a storm. When the light faded, Claire was crying, not from fear but from understanding. "They can't be allowed to win," she said, voice steady now. "They will not," Lyria said. "Not if we stand together." That night, Claire packed what she could. Tools, rations, a portable scanner, and the crystal now worn on a cord around her neck. She shut down the station, leaving a message in case anyone came looking. She did not know if she would return, but for the first time in years, she felt awake. Kalen let her ride on his back as they boarded Lyria's ship. It was unlike anything Claire had seen. Walls that breathed, consoles that responded to thought, corridors that shifted like living tissue. Lyria showed her the war room where star maps flickered with red zones, worlds already lost. "We start with Varel 9, Lyria said, an ice moon where the Dominion stores data on the Forge's core. If we can breach it, we can find its weakness." Claire nodded. She did not know how to fight a war, but she knew how to find a broken thing and make it work again. Maybe that was enough. As the ship lifted off, Series 9 shrinking below, Claire looked out the viewport. The stars no longer seemed distant. They felt like witnesses, like they were waiting. And somewhere in the dark, the Dominion stirred, unaware that the woman they had dismissed as insignificant had just become their greatest threat. Not because she was strong, but because she remembered. And in a universe that sought to forget, memory was the most dangerous weapon of all. The journey to Varel 9 took 3 cycles, each one colder and quieter than the last. Claire spent most of it studying schematics Lyria pulled from encrypted Dominion channels, her fingers tracing routes through ice tunnels and shielded data vaults. Kalen curled in the ship's lower hold, his massive form radiating warmth that kept the cabin from freezing. He rarely made sound, but when he did, it was a low hum that seemed to calm the ship itself. Claire had started calling it his song, though she never said it aloud. Varel 9 was a dead moon wrapped in glaciers a mile thick, its surface scoured by ion storms and patrolled by silent drones. The Dominion had carved their outpost deep beneath the ice, hidden from scanners and shielded by layers of quantum static. From orbit it looked like nothing, but Lyria's eyes narrowed when she saw it. She remembered this place, not as a visitor, but as a prisoner. They landed during a storm, the ship cloaking itself in thermal mimicry as it settled into a crevasse. Claire wore a reinforced suit lined with heat coils, the crystal warm against her chest. Lyria moved like a ghost, her steps leaving no trace in the snow. Kalen stayed behind. He was too large to sneak, and his presence would trigger every alarm on the moon. But before they left, he pressed his forehead to Claire's helmet, a gesture that sent a jolt of calm through her nerves. Inside the ice, the outpost hummed with cold precision. Corridors glowed with pale blue light, walls smooth and seamless. Drones floated past on silent repulsors, scanning for heat, for sound, for lies. Claire followed Lyria through service tunnels, her breath loud in her own ears. She carried no weapons, only a pulse cutter and a neural tap, tools she knew better than guns. Lyria needed no tools. Her hands could unravel code with a touch, her mind slipping through firewalls like wind through cracks. They reached the central vault after bypassing 3 security layers. It was a spherical chamber, suspended in the heart of the glacier, filled with floating data orbs that pulsed like slow heartbeats. Each orb held memories, stolen, sorted, stored. Claire reached for one, but Lyria caught her wrist. "Do not touch," she whispered. "They will feel you." But Claire had already seen something in the nearest orb, a flicker of a child's laugh, a sunrise over a green world, a song in a language no one spoke anymore. It was beautiful, and it was dying. "We have to take them," Claire said. "We cannot carry them all," Lyria replied. "But we can find the forge's location. That is why we are here." While Lyria interfaced with the main console, her fingers sinking into the surface like it was water, Claire kept watch. Her eyes scanned the room, her mind racing. Then she saw it, a small terminal blinking with a human signature. Impossible. Humans had never been here. Yet the access log showed repeated entries from a biotag labeled Earth Origin. She tapped into it. The screen lit up with fragmented files. Project Remnant. Phase 3. Target species Homo sapiens. Estimated harvest window 14 cycles. Claire's blood ran cold. They were already planning for Earth. Not just erasing it, harvesting it. Turning every memory, every dream, every kiss and cry into fuel for their machine. "Lyria," she said, voice tight. "They are coming for us soon." "I know," Lyria said without turning. "The forge is not just a weapon. It is a god to them, and they believe it must be fed." Suddenly, alarms blared. Not loud, but deep, vibrating through the ice. Red lights pulsed. The drones outside shifted direction, converging on their position. "They know we are here," Claire said. "They always knew," Lyria replied, pulling her hand free. "We have what we came for." "Go," they ran. The corridors twisted, defenses activating, walls sealing, floors electrifying, air turning thin. Claire used her pulse cutter to blast through a bulkhead, her hand steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. Behind them, drones swarmed like metal insects, firing stun lances that crackled with violet energy. In a narrow junction, Lyria stopped. She placed both hands on the wall and closed her eyes. The ice around them groaned. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, a new tunnel opened, raw, unstable, leading straight up. "Climb," Lyria ordered. Claire went first, digging her boots into the ice. Above the storm raged, snow whipping like knives. She pulled herself onto the surface just as the ground beneath her cracked. Lyria emerged seconds later, bleeding from a gash on her temple. The drones broke through behind them, skimming over the ice. Then from the sky came fire. Kalen dove like a comet. Wings spread wide, mouth open in a roar that shook the moon's crust. Blue-white flame erupted from his throat, melting drones into slag before they could fire. He landed between the women and the outpost, shielding them with his body as more drones poured out. "Get on," he seemed to say, lowering his back. Claire helped Lyria onto Kalen's spine, then climbed after her. The dragon launched into the storm without hesitation, ice and fire swirling around them. Below, the outpost's defenses fired wildly, but Kalen twisted through the blast like smoke. Back in orbit, aboard the ship, Claire collapsed onto the floor, gasping. Lyria tended to her wound with a gel that sealed flesh like liquid silk. Kalen rested his head on the ramp, exhausted but alert. "We got the coordinates," Lyria said, showing Claire a star map. "The forge is inside a hollowed neutron star near the galactic core, shielded by gravity wells and time distortions. No ship can reach it except one keyed to Dominion blood. Do we have that?" Lyria looked at her. "We have something better. We have you." "The crystal responds to human will," Lyria explained. "The Dominion never considered that a human mind could interface with their tech. They see you as animals, simple, forgetful. But your mind is not simple. It is layered, emotional, chaotic. And that is what the Forge cannot predict." Claire stared at the map. A neutron star. A place where time bent and matter screamed. She was a mechanic, not a pilot of impossible missions. But then she remembered the data orb, the child's laugh. The green sunrise? The song? "What happens if we fail? Everything forgets us," Lyria said simply. "Earth. Your family. Your name. All of it vanishes as if it never was. Not even dust remains." Claire touched the crystal. It pulsed, warm and sure. "Then we don't fail." Later, as the ship jumped toward the core, Claire sat alone in the observation deck. Kalen joined her, curling around the room like a living wall. She leaned against his side, feeling the slow beat of his heart. "You lost your home too, didn't you?" she said. He exhaled, a soft rumble in his chest. "I'm sorry." He nudged her gently as if to say it was not her fault, and maybe it wasn't. But it was her fight now. In the quiet dark, Claire made a promise. Not out loud, but deep in her bones. She would not let them erase anyone else, not while she still remembered, not while she still breathed. And far ahead in the twisted heart of a dead star, the Forge waited, unaware that the spark it dismissed as insignificant was about to burn it all down. After Varel 9, Claire was no longer just a mechanic with a strange crystal. She was a spark in the dark, and word of her spread faster than she expected. It began with a coded message from a freighter captain who owed her a favor. Rumors of a human working with a Veiled and a dragon, striking Dominion outposts, freeing data vaults. Then came others. A rebel cell from the Perseus arm, their world half erased. A group of Zenthari engineers who had sabotaged Dominion harvesters. Even a lone Krell warrior, last of his hive, seeking vengeance for his broodmind. They gathered on a hidden asteroid base called Ember Hollow, carved into the heart of a dead comet. Claire stood before them not as a leader but as a guide. She spoke plainly without grand words, showing them schematics, sharing what Lyria had taught her about the Forge's weakness. The crystal around her neck glowed brighter each time she spoke of memory, not as data, but as feeling, as truth. Lyria watched from the shadows, her silver eyes unreadable. She did not trust crowds. Her people had been betrayed too often, but she saw how Claire moved among them, not with authority but with honesty. How she listened more than she spoke, how she fixed a child's broken toy while planning an assault on a Dominion relay station. That, Lyria realized, was the power the Dominion could never understand. Not strength, but care. Kalen became their guardian. He patrolled the skies above Ember Hollow. His presence alone enough to scatter Dominion scouts. Pilots whispered that his wings cast no shadow, only warmth. Children left offerings of scrap metal at the base of his perch, and he would nudge them gently with his snout, sometimes curling around their sleeping quarters during ion storms. Claire trained with Lyria each night, not in combat but in connection. She learned to let the crystal sync with her thoughts, to feel the hum of alien tech not as noise but as language. At first it gave her headaches, nosebleeds, moments of disorientation, but slowly she began to see patterns, the rhythm of shield generators, the pulse of memory cores, the silent scream of erased worlds trapped in Dominion servers. One evening, during a drill, Claire touched a captured Dominion console. Instead of static, she heard a voice, her mother's, singing a lullaby she had not remembered since childhood. Tears filled her eyes. Lyria placed a hand on her shoulder. "They take everything," Lyria said, "but they cannot take what you choose to hold." The final plan formed over weeks. The Forge sat inside a neutron star called the Silent Maw, its gravity so intense that time slowed near its surface. Only a ship woven with Dominion biocircuitry could survive the descent. Lyria had one, her old command vessel hidden in a nebula since her escape. But it needed a pilot who could interface with the crystal, who could navigate the Forge's psychic defenses. That pilot was Claire, The assault would be three-pronged. Rebel fleets would draw Dominion forces away from the core. Scifi hackers would disable outer shields, and Claire, Lyria, and Kaelin would slip through the breach. It was desperate. It was likely suicide, but no one backed down. The night before launch, Claire sat alone on the observation ledge of Ember Hollow. Kaelin joined her, his scales catching the starlight. She leaned against him, exhausted but calm. "I never thought I'd be doing this," she said. He rumbled softly. "I used to fix engines because they made sense. Bolts, wires, pressure. No feelings. No choices, but this is all choice." He turned his head, golden eyes holding hers. "You think I'm doing the right thing?" He nudged her chest, right over the crystal. "You remember?" she whispered. "That's why you fight." He closed his eyes as if in agreement. Inside the base, Lyria watched them from a corridor. For the first time in centuries, she felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Not the sharp, desperate kind, but the quiet kind that grows in the dark, waiting for light. The launch came at dawn cycle. The ship, named Echo's Veil, rose from the asteroid on silent thrusters. Claire sat in the pilot's cradle. The crystal fused to the console, her mind already syncing with its rhythm. Lyria stood behind her, hands on the tactical array. Kaelin was folded into the cargo hold, his form wrapped in energy-dampening coils to hide his signature. The journey to the silent maw took 2 days. The closer they got, the heavier the silence became. Comms died. Stars dimmed. Even thoughts felt sluggish, as if wading through syrup. Claire fought it, focusing on the crystal's pulse, on the memory of Series 9's twin suns, on the sound of Kaelin's hum. When they reached the maw's edge, the forge revealed itself, a swirling vortex of black and silver, built into the neutron star's crust like a tumor of light. Dominion warships circled it like vultures, but the diversion worked. Rebel fleets clashed with them in the distance, explosions blooming like dying flowers. "Now," Lyria said. Claire pushed the throttle. The Echo's Veil dove. Gravity twisted. Time stretched. Claire's vision blurred, but the crystal held her steady. She saw flashes, not just her own memories, but others. A Scifi mother holding her child. A Krell warrior roaring as his hive fell. Lyria weeping in her cryochamber. All of it poured into her, not as pain but as fuel. They breached the forge's outer shell. Inside, corridors pulsed with stolen memories. Walls lined with weeping faces made of light. Claire ran. Lyria beside her, Kaelin roaring behind as he tore through Dominion sentinels. The core was deep at the center of the star where reality frayed. Then disaster. A Dominion hunter, tall, armored, faceless, ambushed them. It struck Lyria with a memory-drain lance. She screamed as her essence was pulled from her body, her form flickering like a dying bulb. Claire fired her pulse cutter, but the hunter absorbed the blast. Kaelin lunged, flame engulfing the corridor. The hunter staggered, but not before dragging Lyria into the core chamber and sealing the door. Claire pounded on the barrier, sobbing. Kaelin roared, melting the frame. But the door held, woven with Lyria's own biosignature. She's powering the final cycle, Claire realized. They're using her to erase Earth. She looked at the crystal. It glowed fiercely, almost burning. She knew what she had to do. "Hold the line," she told Kaelin. He nodded, planting himself before the door, eyes blazing. Claire turned and ran, not away, but deeper into the forge, toward the neural nexus. If she could reach it, she could reverse the flow. But it would take more than tech. It would take a memory strong enough to break the machine. And she had one. She reached the nexus, a sphere of writhing light, humming with the voices of the forgotten. She pressed the crystal to its surface and closed her eyes. She did not think of weapons or tactics. She thought of her mother's lullaby, of fixing the Marlowe's engine with grease on her hands, of Lyria's tear turning to crystal, of Kaelin's warmth in the cold dark. She offered it all, not as fuel, but as a gift. The forge shuddered. The voices rose not in pain, but in song. Inside the heart of the silent maw, where time bent and memory screamed, Claire held nothing back. She did not fight the forge. She spoke to it. Not with words, but with everything she had ever loved, ever lost, ever hoped for. The crystal burned against her palm, not with pain, but with purpose. It drank her memories, not to erase them, but to amplify them, to send them echoing through the machine like a song through an empty hall. The forge shuddered. Its walls, made of stolen moments and silenced voices, began to crack. Light bled through the fractures. Not the cold silver of Dominion control, but warm gold, the color of sunrises on forgotten worlds. The voices changed. No longer cries of loss, but whispers of return. A child calling for her mother. A poet reciting verses under twin moons. A farmer singing to his fields as rain fell for the first time in years. In the core chamber, Lyria hung suspended in a web of glowing filaments, her body fading, her silver eyes dim. The Dominion hunter stood over her, feeding her essence into the final cycle. Earth's timeline flickered on the central display, cities vanishing, oceans drying, names dissolving into static, seconds from total erasure. Then the song reached her. It came not through wires or waves, but through the bond forged years ago in a derelict ship. Claire's voice, silent but sure, filled Lyria's mind. Not with commands, but with trust, with love, with the memory of a human who freed her without asking why. Lyria opened her eyes. She reached inward, not to resist, but to join. She took Claire's offering and wove it with her own stolen memories. The first time she saw a human laugh, the warmth of Kaelin's breath on her hand, the quiet courage in Claire's hands as she fixed what others broke. Together, their memories became a key, and the forge's lock turned. The machine reversed. Energy surged backward through the filaments. The hunter staggered as the flow inverted, its armor cracking under the weight of returning souls. Lyria fell to the floor, gasping as the web dissolved. The display above flickered wildly. Earth reappeared, then another world, then another, like stars blinking back to life after an eclipse. Outside, Kaelin felt the shift. The door before him groaned, then shattered. He charged into the core chamber, flame ready, but stopped when he saw Lyria rising and Claire stumbling in from the Nexus corridor, pale but alive. "It's done," Claire whispered. "Not yet," Lyria said, pointing to the central console. "The forge is broken, but the Dominion still lives. We must ensure it cannot be rebuilt." Claire nodded. She placed her hands on the console, the crystal now fused into her skin. With Lyria beside her and Kaelin guarding the entrance, she sent one final pulse. A command not of destruction, but of release. Every memory stored in the forge poured out, not into oblivion, but back to where it belonged. Across the galaxy, people woke from nightmares they could not explain. Cities reappeared on maps. Children found toys they thought were lost. Songs returned to lips that had forgotten the words. The Dominion collapsed within days. Without the forge, their power crumbled. Their fleets turned on each other. Their leaders vanished into the chaos they had created. The veiled expanse, once silent, began to heal. Claire, Lyria, and Kaelin returned to Ember Hollow as heroes, but they did not stay. Claire refused titles. Lyria refused thrones. Kaelin refused cages, even gilded ones. They left the rebellion to rebuild and sailed the Echo's veil toward quieter stars. They found a small moon near the outer rim. Green hills, twin suns, familiar skies. Ceres 9, Claire's old repair dock still stood, untouched by time or war. They landed gently, Kaelin curling around the structure like a living wall, his scales catching the light like polished stone. Claire rebuilt her life, but not alone. She fixed engines still, but now with Lyria reading star charts beside her and Kaelin napping in the shade. The crystal no longer glowed, it had given all it had. But Claire kept it on her desk, a smooth stone now, warm to the touch. Lyria no longer fed on memories. The bond with Claire had changed her. She found nourishment in shared silence, in watching Claire work, in the way Kaelin hummed when the wind blew just right. She was no longer veiled. She was seen. Kaelin never spoke in words, but he did not need to. His presence was enough. Children from nearby settlements came to visit, not in fear, but in wonder. He let them climb on his back, their laughter echoing through the hills. He was not a weapon anymore. He was home. Years passed. The galaxy healed. New alliances formed. Old wounds scarred over. But in that quiet corner of space, 3 beings who had faced the end of memory chose to live in its light. Claire often sat on the porch at dusk, watching the twin suns dip below the horizon. Lyria would join her, silent and steady. Kaelin's head would rest on the railing, golden eyes half closed. No one spoke much. They did not need to. They remembered. And because they remembered, others could too. And in the stars above, no light bled red anymore. They simply shone, bright, clear, and full of stories that would never be forgotten again.